Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome. We are talking week 6 starts and sits, going over all the optimal plays at each position and my recommendations on who you should start and sit for week 6. Going to cover it all right here, right now. Do have an announcement. There is a giveaway, actually a couple giveaways, okay? Go to pristineauction.com, use promo code SWAGLION. That's all you got to do. This is a signed Justin Herbert jersey. And I've got a signed Kyler Murray helmet behind me. And these giveaways are going to be ongoing. So if you enter now, you're going to be entered for more of these giveaways. So again, signed Justin Herbert, the hottest player in football now, jersey in my hand. It's an official jersey. And it's got the authentication right here and the Kyler Murray helmet behind me. To enter, pristineauction.com. Use code SWAGLION. You're entered, all right? Let's get to the show. We're talking starts and sits for week 6. Let's get to it. All right, guys, welcome to the show, week 6. And I was watching Thursday Night Football yesterday. I got to tell you, some people say football is fixed. Now, I don't know if it's necessarily fixed, but if you are an Eagles fan, you must think that it is. Because, man, what a game yesterday. I mean, if you watched it, there were some calls and some non-calls that went against the Eagles, including that taunting penalty from the defender of the Eagles who got in the face. He didn't even get in the face of Leonard Fournette, but he just kind of stood up, said a couple words, and there was a penalty there which worked in the favor of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then they basically iced the game. The game was over. So, I don't know, man. It is what it is, but that did not go the Eagles' way when it comes to refs calling. It went Brady's way. That's all I got to say. Leave your comments on that game below. Curious to hear your thoughts. Just didn't go the Eagles' way. They could have easily won that game, but those penalties and the non-penalty calls were crazy. So, I want to talk about that. But today we're talking about starts and sits. I'm going to give you some optimal plays at each position. Also, a couple announcements. I'm bringing back the Joe Camo Show. If you guys are wondering what that is, I've linked it here below. Basically, guys, I want to talk football. I want to talk sports. I want to have interviews. I can't really do that here on the Fantasy Football Council Show because, well, we're talking fantasy football. That's what people come here more for, that type of information. So the Joe Camo Show, just Google it, Joe and then Kamo Show on Spotify. Also on YouTube, going to put it out everywhere. Make sure you guys are subscribed. We're going to start bringing that out. I've been kind of putting that to the side, but I definitely want to start building that. And of course, head on over to manscaped.com. Use promo code SHOWERLION. Save yourself 20% on some amazing products. Fit and Finish. They've got some amazing razors. Wearing the underwear right now. Super comfortable. Ball wipes. Everything you need, guys, to stay fresh. Manscaped.com. Promo code SHOWERLION. All right. Also, let's dive into this, guys. Let's go. Thumbs up. Helps the channel. Please, guys. Takes 2 seconds. All right, so let's talk about this. Quarterbacks here. Let's talk about optimal plays at quarterback, okay? Now, understand, guys, if you're torn between 2 quarterbacks, go for the guy that's most consistent. That's some starts and sits advice because so many people start the wrong person. They get screwed that week. Make sure you guys are starting the most consistent person. Then you also look at matchups as well. So I'm going to give you guys the matchup aspect and some recommendations, okay? Especially in DFS. Go back. I did a DFS show. This is also going to help you with some DFS as well if you guys play daily fantasy sports. DraftKings, FanDuel, this is going to help you because you know who the optimal players are. And if I mentioned your quarterback, wide receiver, running back, understand, then you guys can kind of use your own plug and play with your year-long lineups, okay? So here we go. Optimal players. Taylor Heineke, great matchup. Pat Mahomes, great matchup. Davis Mills, great matchup. But are you going to start Davis Mills? Probably not. He's had like one good game. Kyler Murray, great matchup versus Cleveland. That's going to be probably one of the games to watch this week. Trevor Lawrence versus Miami, great matchup. Now, they are due for a win. I did a whole preview show. Go back and listen to yesterday. Talked about all the matchups. We do a whole preview show, Tanner Pfeiffer and I. We talk about all the matchups, the spreads, what we think, win or loss, okay? Trevor Lawrence, due for a win this week, okay? But he's got a good matchup versus Miami. Mac Jones, not the most exciting player, but does have a good matchup. So if you're in a 2-quarterback league, you're torn on your second quarterback, maybe it's Mac Jones. I mean, it's totally up to you guys, okay? Josh Allen coming off a huge 40-point game, 21-point game, and a 40-point game the week before. Josh Allen on fire, and he's playing Tennessee. He's got a great matchup, okay? So those are some great matchup quarterbacks. Let me give you a couple more names here you may want to consider. Now, again, I'm personally not starting them, but Jacoby Brissett, Carson Wentz have decent matchups, okay? So if you have them, maybe consider them. Mid-range matchup guys, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff. Not easy matchups, not hard matchups, but good matchups. So if you're like, hey, I'm torn between Herbert and, Trevor Lawrence on my team, I'm probably still going to go Herbert, but Trevor Lawrence does have the better matchup, just so you're aware. So it's up to you to gauge it. Guys with tough matchups, Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers, okay? Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson versus the Chargers, okay? Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield, and Sam Darnold, all top 10, pretty much top 10 tough matchups versus position, okay, guys? So let's move on here to the running back position. Now, let me tell you some of the running backs I do like. Now, Joe Mixon has been safe at best. I don't like him this week that much, but if you have him in year-long, start him. He's got a great matchup, arguably the best versus position. James Robinson, who I absolutely love. He's on all my teams, has had 3 amazing weeks, 25, 21, and 25 points last week, consistently producing on a high level. Really good after the contact, gets those extra yards, fights for those extra yards. Has got an easy matchup versus Miami this week, okay? Just so you're aware. Najee Harris, great matchup versus Seattle. He's also been pretty rock solid the past couple weeks. Got him on my teams as well. Austin Eckler, who's been red hot. Great matchup versus Baltimore this week. Red hot. 34 points last week, okay? Melvin Gordon, I'm more into the Javonte Williams train. I'm more on that. He's got a great matchup. Javonte Williams, 12 points last week. Not the most exciting because Melvin Gordon's getting integrated, but they both have a good matchup if you have either one of them, okay? Darrell Henderson versus the Giants, great matchup versus position. I got a green light that one. And Darrell Williams, guys. KC, good matchup coming in for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, okay? Something to note. Some mid-range matchups. Christian McCaffrey, watch it. It might be a game-time decision. Be cautious between him and both Dalvin Cook. So we're talking about rough matchups, right? Dalvin Cook does not have an easy matchup. Just let me make a note of that. He is playing Carolina's rush defense, and he may be limited. So both Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook coming back, I think they're both going to be playing, but they may be limited. So be very cautious. I know a lot of people ask me if they should start them. If you have Dalvin Cook and he says he's going to start, I'd probably say start him. But understand that he may be limited. That's going to be a possible issue going into this matchup, okay? So he's got it in tough as well. Josh Jacobs, tough matchup versus position. Derrick Henry, who's been red hot. Buffalo's rush defense, he's got it in tough. They focus in on Henry. He's probably going to see a lot of stacked boxes. Could be a rough game, but hey, it's Derrick Henry. As long as he gets a touchdown or two, 50 to 100 yards, you've got yourself a safe game. Kenyon Drake, okay? Like I said, Josh Jacobs, tough matchup, okay? Other guys that have it in tough here, James Conner, Chase Edmonds. Edmonds, he's a little banged up there. But if James Conner's getting the full nod, he's got it in tough versus Cleveland, okay? And Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb coming off a huge game. Kareem Hunt always outscoring him PPR somehow. Both of them have a tough matchup versus Arizona's rush defense. And then you got to mention Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon have it in tough versus Chicago's rush defense. And a couple of mid-range matchups, guys, if you're wondering, does Zeke Elliott have a good matchup this week? It's mid-range, not hard, not difficult. 12th hardest versus position. DeAndre Swift, mid-range matchup. And also, if you are curious, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, also a mid-range matchup, along with Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor. Taylor playing the Texans, okay? Those are your matchups. Again, the big questions are, what do we do with Cook and McCaffrey? I would probably start them, but again, be prepared. They may be limited. And also, Devontae Booker with Saquon out. Do you start him? I mean, you have to. He's going to get the volume. If you don't have a better option, go for it. Let's talk about some tough matchups versus position at the wide receiver position. A.J. Brown versus Buffalo. He has not been very good all season. The mainstream had him top 7 amongst wide receivers. I said he's going to bust. Why is he going to bust? Because Ryan Tannehill was 18th in passing attempts last year on a run-first team with Julio there. Now, Julio's not been much of a factor, but either or. Both these guys have been sucking. As predicted, I stayed away from both of them. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, both been sucking. Both have a tough matchup this week versus Buffalo. So if you're thinking of saying it's a breakout week for one of those guys, maybe, but they have it in tough. Devontae Smith, Courtland Sutton, okay? Sorry, not Devontae Smith. I meant Courtland Sutton. Devontae Smith played yesterday. Courtland Sutton has got it in tough, okay? And Devontae Smith had it in tough. He didn't have the great greatest game, right? So those are some of my notes here. Cortland Sutton got it in tough. He's playing Las Vegas. He had a good game last week. Is that going to continue? Who the heck knows, right? There's a lot of uncertainty with that offense, just so you know. Marquise Brown versus the Chargers got it in tough, just so you know. The Chargers. Yeah, the Chargers and the Ravens. So, yeah, he's got it in tough, Marquise Brown. Another guy you should be aware of here is Michael Pittman versus the Texans. They do play wide receivers a little bit tougher. He's got it in tough as well. Jefferson and Thielen versus Carolina. Got it in tough, okay? CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. Got it in tough. So Dallas versus New England. Tough matchup. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Not the easiest matchup versus Baltimore secondary. Be aware. They've got a tough matchup. And again, Mike Williams is a little bit bipolar here with his production. He really did well, last week, but the week before, crap to bed. The week before, good. He's kind of been on and off. So look for Keenan Allen to be that safe guy who's been producing every single week. Jamar Chase, tougher matchup versus Detroit secondary, but he's been on fire. You got to start him if you have year long, okay? Let's go to the guys with optimal matchups at wide receiver. Stephon Diggs versus Tennessee. Great matchup. DK Metcalf. Great matchup. Although Geno Smith, do we trust him to produce? Something to be aware if you are a Lockett Metcalf owner. Metcalf was a little bit banged up, but he should be good to go. He just didn't practice Thursday. That's all. But he should be good to go. Be aware, Geno Smith is there. Okay. Brandon Cooks and all those guys got an easy matchup there versus Indy. Laviska Shenault, great matchup versus Miami. Tyreek Hill, great matchup. He's been up and down. Safe game, boom game. Safe game, boom game. Playing Washington. He does have a great matchup this week, something to be aware of, okay? Deontay Johnson, Claypool. I would start both those guys. Juju's out. Great matchup as well versus Seattle, something to be aware of. Devontae Adams, who's been hot, great matchup as well, okay? Now, Odell Beckham Jr., who's absolutely crap in the bed, does have a good matchup this week. I do not trust him at all whatsoever at all. Also, DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson due for a breakout week, possibly. And I like Kadarius Toney, mid-range matchup, and I like him for getting volume. Also, keep an eye out for Amon-Ra St. Brown taking a step up this week with volume, with Cephas being out. And a guy, he's actually been looking pretty good in camp as well. All right, I'm going to give you guys some tight ends here to consider. Tight ends, just start your best tight end. Get 10 points out of them. You're good to go. Tight ends is very slim and trim with those good tight ends. But Kelsey, mid-range matchup. Mark Andrews, good matchup versus the Chargers. Tyler Higbee, good matchup. Mike Gesicki, good matchup. Hunter Henry, good matchup. Jared Cook, good matchup, but Jared Cook very up and down, whether he gets the touchdown or not. That kind of makes or breaks his week. Darren Waller, Dalton Schultz, both those guys been relatively consistent. Schultz been a little more consistent than Darren Waller, and he was going undrafted this year in drafts. Both those guys have tough matchup. Waller, arguably the second hardest matchup for his position. Denver plays tight ends tough. And Dalton Schultz versus New England, he's got it in tough as well. Jack Doyle, great matchup, but just not very consistent at all. But he could be due for a touchdown this week. Okay, guys? TJ Hawkinson, a lot of talk about him. Been very inconsistent the past 3 weeks. Does have a tough matchup versus position, fifth hardest versus position, just so you're aware of that, okay? So don't be like, oh, I started Hawkinson expecting stuff, and he hasn't been producing. Well, he does have it in tough this week. A lot of talk about Dawson Knox. Third hardest matchup for him this week against Tennessee. He's been pretty rock solid, but I think he's still going to produce. Allen will find a way to get the ball to him as well, okay? So those are some tight ends. Go back, let's do it again if you need to. Defense, very simple for defense. If you are streaming a defense, Dolphins versus Jacksonville could be solid, but again, like I said, Trevor Lawrence could have a big game. Jacksonville versus Miami, either one of those defenses could be good. Cowboys versus New England could be a good defense to pick up. Bills versus Tennessee, Colts versus Houston, and I got the Bengals versus Detroit. All good matchups to potentially start if you're looking at streaming. You also may want to consider the Packers versus Chicago, the uncertainty with that offense with the Bears, and Lions versus Cincy. But again, Burrow could tear up that offense, tear up that defense, okay? So those are your starts and sits, guys. Again, if you're torn between this player and that player, what I do is I take a look at the matchup, and I've given you all the optimal plays at each position. And I also take a look at how consistent that player is, and then how consistent the player is that I'm comparing on who I want to start. So if I'm torn between player A and player B, how good is that matchup, number one, and how consistent has that player been? Okay, so I take a look at those variables, and at the end of the day, you got to go with your gut feeling if you're torn on who to start, because I get a lot of starts and sits questions, and it's very important you start the right player. All right, guys? That's it. Those are starts and sits for week 6. I can't believe we're 6 weeks in. Unbelievable. Okay, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys do subscribe. And again, pristineauction.com, use promo code SWAGLINE, enter for all of the amazing draws and giveaways, including this signed Justin Herbert jersey and the Kyler Murray signed speed helmet behind me. Subscribe, guys. Week 6 is here. Enjoy the games. I'm out.